All right. Greetings, everyone. This is part two to my, I don't know exactly what it's going to be called yet, but basically the blood moon and contagious virus omen or mystery revealed regarding the link between blood moons, the blood moon tetrad, and um, the arrival and rise of contagious viruses. Oh, I was just checking my lighting and everything, making sure everything would be visible. Looks good. So I'm out here and I'm hoping because it's been raining and that it's wet that I'm going to have privacy. So hopefully, Lord willing, I can get through this video in privacy without having a bunch of people come interrupt me or be around or whatever. So one second. So kind of just and if you haven't seen part one to this, you 100 million% need to go watch part one first, or you're not going to understand what's even happening. So you definitely want to do that. But I'm not going to recap and go back into it. You'll just have to go get part one and watch that first. But picking up where I kind of left off, and I hope this video is not going to come out too dark. Hopefully it'll be a way for me to brighten it up later, but kind of picking up where I left off, I was showing you guys the link between the blood moon tetrad years and the viruses. And back in 2014 and 2015, during the first Ebola outbreak, it wasn't just that Ebola was present or Ebola was occurring on the earth. We already knew that. And I mean, it wasn't just, oh, that's over there in Africa and Ebola exists. Ebola has existed for a while now, and people have had it before. So the difference with this is that it actually became a large-scale epidemic, and it actually breached outside of the African countries that it started in, and it spread. And what was significant about the first outbreak in those years was that it actually, see if this is brighter, it actually touched down on American soil. So that is the important part, is that it actually, instead of it just happening over there or somewhere else, it actually made it to our soil. So that's very significant. And I believe it made it over into several other countries as well. I know there were countries in Europe. I think the UK had maybe a country or two where it actually made it onto their soil as well. And so looking at the pattern is that it's not just that it occurred, but that it actually was able to reach U.S. soil. And so that's the concern now, if we were to look at the pattern before of it repeating again. Hold on. See if it's a way I can brighten it all the way up. See if this is better. But I guess that's a little better. But so yes, so that is what we're concerned. So I left off sharing with you guys about these two states in America that are seeing the arrival, not just the arrival, but flooding, as the secular news is quoting. They're flooding in these two states, Maine and Texas, and they're African migrants from the Congo, which is where the Ebola outbreak originated and where it's currently spreading like wildfire. Excuse me. And truthfully, that country should be quarantined because now it has made it over the border into neighboring countries. I know it's made it into Uganda. I'm not 100% sure if it's the name of the other country or if there's a second or third country yet. But the point is that this is somewhere that should be isolated and quarantined at this point, and it's not really yet. And this has been going on, this second outbreak has been going on since last year and last spring. And during between last year and this year, we have thousands of people that have fled that specific country on their journey to come to the United States. And so that's what we're just now seeing their arrival, but it's being kept hidden in secret. So these news stories, even these two stories, barely made it out. This is only one channel, one single reporter. Who is it? I forgot her name. I think it's Ingram, Laura Ingram. She's the only show that's really reporting on this as far as mainstream. I mean, so therefore, they try to keep this hush hush, but it's now kind of making its way out and spreading into mainstream news, and the rest of the channels are kind of like just trying to cover it up. Oh, those are just rumors. We got nothing to worry about, guys. Everything is peaches and cream. Everyone's safe. Nothing's going on. Everything's fine. Don't worry. And so that's where things are with that. But I shared in part one where I was actually given a dream about this, and the dream was warning about the official narrative being full of lies and deception. So that's where we are right now. Let's see, what do I have next? I'm going to show you guys a bunch of articles that will show you kind of the full scope of how bad things are getting, and they don't want to really talk about it right now. So just bear with me. So while I was taking a break, you may see me just switching around, really just trying to find the brightest spot for this. So while I was taking a break from part one, something's been kind of nagging at me, and that's the title of this video I posted last year, which was this one right here. It says Blood Moons, Obama, and Vaccines. So looking at this as prophetic, we already know now what the blood moons is, check. And we know why vaccines were mentioned, check, because obviously it has something to do with viruses. But I also had Obama in this video, and I know I had him in the video at the time. I was touching on a story about him, but as far as prophetically looking forward into the future, that's the part I kind of had a question mark, like, so what part does that play in this whole puzzle piece and equation? And I kind of just been wondering, waiting for the Holy Spirit to tell me, and I'm not saying this is the full story. For all I know, there could be more that's going to unfold going forward, but the main thing that I now am seeing is that the first, the tetrad in 2014 and 2015 that saw the first outbreaks, and then 2018, 2019 is the second blood moon period with the second outbreaks. Guys, what do you notice about those two time frames? We're talking about 2014, 2015, and then 2018, 2019. Can you guess what those two separate time frames have in common and how they're linked together? The answer is they were preceding going into an election year for the United States. 1415 was leading into the 2016 presidential election for the United States of America. This is when Obama was leaving office and Trump, the current president, is coming in, or whoever would have been voted for would have been coming in. And then 2018, 2019 is really that last year before the election is really when things start to get ramped back up towards, all the candidates kind of coming out of the woodwork, crawling out of their holes, when they start campaigning, announcing their run, when they start running ads, when they kind of start stepping up on the world scene, getting us familiar with them or what have you. But the point is that those 2 years, what they also have in common is that they're leading into election years. It's kind of like the precursor and the prep time before we have the actual election. And that's why his name was in there prophetically, is because back in 2014, 2015, that's when the Ebola made it to US soil. And the first time that it happened, they thought that it was going to actually get worse and spread and get out of control. But through the grace of God, I mean, that could have easily went so bad so quickly. Like I said, you had the guy in Texas, you had multiple medical personnel that came back to the US. I believe a doctor from over there, a nurse from over there, and then it was some lady, I think she owned like a bridal shop. She was also quarantined, and she was in Ohio. And so there was a handful of people who actually had it, who made it here on US soil. Now, that could have easily gotten out of control, spread, and we would have been done for. But like I said, through the grace of God, he stopped it, or at least hit the pause button, and he didn't let it progress any further. And so leading up into that election year, this was one of their plots and plans to have chaos, forced vaccines, quarantines, all these things, to where by the time the election time coming up, we would not have been able to have a normal election. We would have not been able to vote him out and vote somebody else in. This is one of the plans they came up with to try and stop the election, where they could have declared martial law, because obviously if we have Ebola running around rampant everywhere, nobody's going to be thinking, oh, we need to have the election, guys. No, we're going to be afraid and focused on how can we not die. And so that was a plot, just like many other plots and attempts that were made, that the Lord stopped and hit the pause button out of grace. And so once again, they're having that same plot and plan, trying to resurrect it and carry it out, because we're going back into an election year. And for 2020, they don't want Trump to be reelected. They don't want Trump to be reelected. They look at what they did the first time. They didn't want him to get in there in the first place. And so they try to have all types of plans and plots and treachery jump off, martial law, this, that, chaos. And we all were warning about that, but we were able to pray out of it and repent, just that remnant. And the Lord in grace hit the pause button. So they tried to move heaven and earth not to get him in there. So what is that telling you guys? And then now that he made it in there, they want to be sure he does not stay in there. So what is that telling you? And they will do anything and everything to make sure that happens. They don't care if they have to import Ebola here, and if whoever's children and families and how much of us have to die and get disposed of. They don't care how they have to hurt us and what they have to do to us. They don't care. They only care about their objective, which is making sure that he does not get reelected. Why? That's what you Christians need to ask themselves. Why is the enemy and the devil so desperate for this man not to be there? Obviously, the answer is because he is going to do something or accomplish something that is in opposition and contrary to what they're trying to build. Okay? The enemy knows, the devil knows that this is God's anointed to carry out certain duties, and he will do anything and everything to try and stop it. So, I'm going to show you guys some articles. I really hope this volume comes out loud enough. You may have to turn it all the way up or put your earphones in. I'm not sure, but... So, let's look at this. Now that I went through that whole thing, I'm going to kind of give you some more in-depth stories about the broader picture of the whole situation and how it's actually happening right now. And then I'm going to get into how we need to respond and what we need to do about it. So, this is a story, New York Times. Now, let's for a second get off the specifically African migrants. It's going to come back up, but let's just lay that down for a second. But we know, just like I showed you, that that it is in, you know what, I'm going to go back and do this first. I'm going to show you that those African migrants are actually in 16 different United States in the U.S. Hold on one second. Let me grab my time for that video. 11:16. So they've only publicly admitted to 2 states, and honestly, if this one single reporter, and it may have been like a few local stations, if they hadn't have said anything, they would have kept this completely silent from us. It just so happens that it seeped out into the news, and so now they have no choice but to respond to it and lie and say everything's fine, there's no problem. So, but I'm about to show you all the different states that it's really happening in.
Congolese asylum seekers came from.
After moving most of the migrants that recently came into town from Africa, city officials tell KINS 5 they're now expecting more.
As hundreds of asylum seekers from Central Africa head out of the Alamo City, more are expected to move in. City officials tell KINS 5 the roughly 250 Congolese migrants who arrived in San Antonio last week from the border have moved on to their final destination. But the federal government has alerted city officials to anticipate more. The city told KINS 5 they did not know how many more Central African migrants would be coming into town, but said they would be arriving in the coming days and weeks. In an email to KINS 5, the city confirmed they sent the migrants to 16 different cities across the country, including 35 families sent to Portland, Maine.
So,
have moved on. Administration has reached record highs. Risk of somebody from...
Hold on, I'm going to go back to that and repeat it for you.
Days and weeks. In an email to KINS 5, the city confirmed they sent the migrants to 16 different cities across the country, including 35 families sent to...
Okay, she said, now keep in mind, the Texas situation was public. I mean, look how they were just all lined up on the public street, all on the sidewalk, boarding. By the way, they're letting them board our regular public Greyhound buses. They're not being held, they're not being processed, they're not being detained. They're literally just receiving them and then letting them do whatever they want and bus them, transport them wherever they want on the our Greyhound buses. And they're just being sent to go. At first, I thought, well, not that this makes it better, but at first I thought, well, they're gonna bus them to another government facility in these cities. Okay, yeah, a facility receives them when they first get here, but then after that, they can just go live life and go move wherever they want, just start living. Like, these people are not being held like the people from South America are. They're just rampant, living life, running around freely, doing whatever they want. And so with Texas, I mean, they're so blatant, lining the sidewalks, hanging out, that you really can't keep it a secret. It's so obvious. The people who live there started noticing it. But, and I'm going to leave, I don't know if I'm going to leave this video because the person has so many other things and I need to be responsible for what I share. But keep in mind, I tried to Google 16 American cities. There's not one single article online where you can find this information out. This is the single news story that has this on it. I couldn't find this story anywhere else. And if you notice, what she said was that in an email, it revealed that they were shipped to 16 other different U.S. cities. So it was hidden in an email. And if the news reporter person hadn't ever went there to question them, and they hadn't ever showed them the email, this news story would have never gotten out. They would have never known that that was being privately talked about through their government emails. So, I mean, when I heard about... Let's see if I can get you to see that map again.
Expected.
We've had to look at other ways.
Of the Alamo City, more are expected to move in. City officials tell KENS 5 the roughly 250 Congolese migrants who arrived in San Antonio last week from the border have moved on to their final destination. But the federal government has alerted city officials to anticipate more. The city told KENS 5 they did not know how many more Central African migrants would be coming into town, but said they would be arriving in the coming days and weeks. Email to KENS 5, the city confirmed they sent the migrants to 16 different cities across the country, including 30.
So this is the map, and then you can go back and pause my video. It's hard to show you when it's from phone to phone like that, but all the little red dots, those are all the cities that they ship these people from the Congo to. And I mean, when I first heard about even just the two cities, just Maine and Texas, that alone is so dangerous. I was so pissed, and that is so dangerous as it is. But to also see that they've just basically spread these people across 16 other states, I mean, this has such the potential to get so bad so quickly. So without going too much further into that, I just wanted to, so that's already, the lies are already starting, because it was already such a cover-up for them to even announce just the two cities. But now we found in their private emails, which, have you seen it on your news that it's 16 different cities that they're shipping them to? No, because they've been keeping it a secret, and they were never going to let us know. They were never going to tell us. This goes back to my dream when it said the official story and narrative that was being told to us regarding a contagious virus was a lie and full of deceit, and that the real truth and story was horrific. Okay? So, moving on. So that's lie number one. We're already starting with the lies and deceptions and secrets. So this is the New York Times. There is a stench, no soap, and overcrowding in detention centers for migrant children. So this is a facility, one of the migrant facilities in Texas, and they're just saying how horrible the conditions are. Now, what do we notice? They have no soap, overcrowding, and migrants. Now keep in mind, the people from Africa are mixing in. They've also come to Texas and Maine, and they're in 16 other states, which means they're now starting to mix and commingle with the South American, with the Central American, with the Mexican, with people from the Middle East. They're all, so it's not just Mexicans we're talking about here. It's all different people now, especially from Africa, that are all mixing in together. And the Africans are at these facilities as well, not just people from Central America. And so I want to kind of see if I can get some more details for you guys. So number one, we're already seeing that they have no soap and that it's overcrowded. Okay, so let's read some of this. And I'll leave all of these articles below for you. But some of the rooms are so crowded that they can only stand for days and weeks. That's how packed these facilities are. The detainees were observed standing on toilets in the cells to make room and gain breathing space. They have access to limited toilets. So if you only have a few toilets and a bunch of people, what's going to eventually happen? Eventually, if there's nowhere to, in a sanitary way, dispose of waste, you're going to have waste, people just using the bathroom in all these unsanitary ways on themselves in different places. The place is just crawling with a lack of sanitation, a lack of cleanliness. They're running out of supplies. It's so many people, we can't even afford to give them all soap and toothbrushes at this point. We just don't have enough money. There's hundreds and hundreds, there's millions of them at this point. There's just so many. We're being lied to so much. And so there we have waste. And any healthcare professional will tell you, which I used to be, that washing your hands is one of the main defenses against spreading germs, viruses, and diseases. And so if you don't even have soap to wash your hands, whatever diseases and viruses are going to be present are going to spread at an accelerated rate, because there's no way to combat it. You have people not showering, not bathing, not washing up. I'm going to leave the article below. I'm going to just mainly touch on, I seen one part that said the women had old breast milk on their shirt, dried up. Everyone's unbathed. It stinks and it smells from the human waste. And so all of these people didn't just walk. You think people walk on water across the ocean from Africa all the way to South America, to Central America, to the US, to Texas? You think all those people walked from Central America? No, they're being helped. They're being sent here. They're being bused here. They're being transported here. It's a plan. Okay, what did I tell you before? That they will do any and everything, whatever chaos they have to cause to interrupt the 2020 election, or to make sure that something goes wrong and Trump can't stay in office. They will do it. This whole situation is meant to make him look bad, but guess what? They don't care about you. They don't care what disease they have to bring to you and your kids and your children's school and your city and your hometown. They don't care if you die. If they can find a way to make Trump look bad, then that's all they care about. And so they are purposefully sending more and more and more people to where we are beyond capacity, and we don't even have the supplies or the space or the room to house them all, because they're coming from every corner of the earth at this point. This is just something we're not prepared and ready to take on. So moving on, I just want to kind of touch on, so this is from June as well, 2019, Forbes.com. Typhoid fever, typhus, and tuberculosis are in LA, spreading amongst the immigrants and homeless population that's over in California. And for those of you who don't know, I believe typhoid fever is the precursor to the bubonic plague or the Black Death. I'm pretty sure it is. In the same way how HIV is the forerunner to AIDS, how it turns into AIDS, typhoid fever is the forerunner. It's the disease or virus that you get that could turn into and lead to the bubonic plague or Black Death. Okay? And we should all know the story about how many millions of people died in Europe from that. And this was a once pretty much dormant disease. We have not ever had to deal with these dormant and dead diseases for some of them never. The United States has never had to deal with them. And some of them we haven't dealt with in hundreds of years. And now all of a sudden they're all back on the scene all at the same time. And just like my dream said, that it's a lot of lies and deceit about where the origins of these viruses are coming from. So once again, so sorry for that ad. So once again, and they're living in filth in California, the same situation. There's so many people, so many homeless people. They have feces all over the streets. It's just a hotbed of all these diseases that are spreading and running wild. And so I'll put that article about the typhoid fever. And these aren't like we have a concern. These things are already happening now and spreading. Let's check out this. Oh, this is just LA Times, and you have certain doctors on there saying that these diseases in California are getting so bad and spreading on the West Coast that that some people believe they need to start quarantining people in the homeless population because they feel like shortly that the bubonic plague is going to break out in Los Angeles. So these are things that are already touching down in the United States and already spreading. They don't really like to talk about this on the news, and they like to keep it kind of quiet and hush hush. This just saying that rats are spreading the diseases. Okay, and I'll leave that article down below as well. I just kind of wanted you to see the headlines. So if you notice, these diseases are already spreading. So you imagine more and more and more people, thousands upon thousands, being forced in. It's like you're packing all these people into a small container. And then you add onto that the Ebola threat, guys. This is just one huge powder keg waiting to explode. And that's what they're doing it on purpose, hoping that it will explode. And let's see what this is. Oh, this is just more the story about when they arrived in Portland. In Portland, they tried to give Maine even more of the Congo migrants. And then Maine said, we have so many Congo migrants here. We are stuffed and full to capacity. We can't take any more. Texas tried to give them more. And it's not done yet, guys. They said that more and more are expected in the coming days, and as the weeks go on, they expect hundreds and hundreds and hundreds to just keep flowing in. And keep in mind, this is all from an area in the world where you have Ebola happening. Here we have this Buffalo Wild Wings in LA, once again, where a rat fell from the ceiling. And they were just concerned about the cleanliness or the spread of disease. There's a uptick in diseases now spreading through the animals, and huge rat infestations, especially in LA and California. And it's another story where the viruses are being spread through mosquitoes. And when I think about Ebola and some of the animals that are involved with spreading that disease, like bats or whatever, and then I think about all the diseases that we have going on now that are being spread by mosquitoes, which that will include Ebola, guys. If people have Ebola and they're being bitten by mosquitoes or insects, and then that insect comes and bites you, that can be transmitted to you. And so when I think about all of these insects and rats and bats and animals, it reminds me of the book of Revelations, where it's like, I believe it's in the seals. It's either in the bowls, the seals, or the trumpets, where the plagues and diseases, a lot of the spreading of the, not spreading of the disease, but it says that animals are going to play a big part in killing or wiping out part of humanity. And I believe that spreading disease through animals, the way they always play such a significant role in that have something to do with that scripture being fulfilled. So, this is just talking about the mumps outbreak. We had the measles outbreak recently in New York and other places where they were quarantined in New York. They quarantined the Jews because, you know, Jews don't believe in getting vaccines. And so because of that, they locked the Jews up. All of this can be found. And then they quarantined people who lived in that city or town. They had to stay in their homes, and they were having forced vaccines. And they said if you don't get vaccines for the measles because it's spreading so bad, that you cannot come out in public unless you take our vaccine. So people couldn't go to the store. They couldn't live life. They couldn't go to school, couldn't go to work, couldn't travel in public places. And so now we have the border is being quarantined at our southern border. I believe this is Texas. It could be another state. I'm not sure. I'll leave the article below. But now a quarantine is starting where they're saying almost 6,000 immigrants, including border agents, the border patrol and police officers down there, they're becoming, so many of them are getting so sick from catching all these diseases from the immigrants. And then what do you think is going to happen? These officers are going to go home to their families and spread it to their families. So we have so many open doors and passageways for these things to spread and multiply and get out of control. So the border agents are getting sick, and they started a quarantine because of the chicken pox. So this is what they're telling us, is that it's chicken pox and mumps. That's why they have this huge, massive quarantine. I have no idea whether that's true or not. If that's the real disease that's spreading, there goes the flu. That's another outbreak that's starting to spread from the migrants. Remember, the flu was one of the main diseases that was that came out of my prophetic videos. It was the flu and Ebola. And so they've had many flu deaths and outbreaks in these migrant camps and facilities. There's another one that dies. They've just found a couple of dead children. I know that little girl died. She was sick. So my point is, going back to my dream where it said it was a lot of deceit, we can't trust their stories as being accurate. We don't know. I mean, they say that chicken pox. We don't really know what these quarantines and outbreaks and diseases are. We can only know what they tell us. And so I don't believe they're being fully honest about which diseases are which. For all we know, they could lie to us and say, oh, it's just chicken pox, and it could be something like Ebola. So, hold on, I just want to see where I am with my notes. Okay. I'm almost done. There we go. So there's a few other, excuse me, there's a few other videos of mine from last year that I posted that I also wanted to share. And let's just kind of look at some of these Holy Spirit headlines. So I posted this one last year but inside of the title was Georgia Plagues. And I also posted this video as well last year called Georgia, a new revelation layer. And inside of this video, I'll just go inside of it right quick. Come on. Inside of this video, let me see. Well, anyway, I don't know if it's going to pull up or not, but okay, there it is. So, this video I posted last year, which was a prophetic warning, it was called Georgia, because the Lord just kept warning about Georgia, Georgia, and there were several different meanings for the word Georgia and several different ways that that prophecy came true.